Football Show. Welcome to the return of the Serbian Football Show. This is your host Miller speaking as always, and we have a lot of things to talk about this week as things are back in the swing. A lot of news, a lot of things going on, a lot to talk about. I have a couple special guests joining me today. First, we have my man Luca. Luca, did you buy that Bitcoin dip today or what?
Of course, man, you know it, dude. Although I am hurting on my crypto portfolio, but I'm buying the dips though.
It's good to hear. I think you said you're in Mexico?
Yeah, in Tulum for a month, man. It's a lot warmer here than in Washington D.C., dude. So I came down.
All right, hopefully that Mexican internet holds up for you.
Let's hope so.
And we got Alex joining us from Belgrade. Alex, how are you doing?
Doing mixed, I guess you would say. Yin and yang is kind of now the new motto I'm going with since I got my COVID shot. I'm starting to understand our president when he speaks Chinese, so that's pretty good. A lot of stuff, a lot of positive stuff happened in a football sense, but I would like to take this quick moment on a personal note to extend my condolences to the family of George Balašović and to everyone who was affected by his very early passing. He was a great poet, a great musician, and really just a very positive person who also loved football and loved sports. And it was something that hit very hard. A lot of other things have gone down, but that probably hit the hardest. But he wouldn't want us to be down, and a lot of good stuff happened in the footballing sense. So we can move on to that. But I did want to take this opportunity to extend my condolences to him and everyone. It's a big loss, and he'll be dearly missed.
Of course, rest in peace. Yes, let's get on to the football then. A lot of things to talk about. First thing we'll talk about is, I guess it's finally official. We finally have a manager. Dragan Pixi-Stojković, after much rumors. I don't even know if it's rumors. I don't know what was going on in the last 3 months. It seems like a waiting game, a never-ending waiting game, never-ending news reports. At one point he was here, then he turned down the job, and it was impossible, and now he's apparently accepted it. He's confirmed himself, so I guess that's good enough for us to chalk it up as us finally have a new manager. So Pixie's in after all the years that he spent criticizing our failures and the failures of other national team managers. Now he'll get his chance, and we'll see what he can do. We'll see if he can do better. Personally, I think it's a great hire. I am hopeful, cautiously optimistic. I think the players will respect him. I think they'll listen to him. And I think that he doesn't really, need this job. He could easily be still making millions in Asia. For personal interest worth, I don't think he's doing this for the money. Obviously, I think he's going to be the highest paid manager in our history, in our national team history. I think or just under Antic maybe. But he's going to be making a lot of money, but I don't think money is the main reason why he's doing this, because he could have easily just sat at home and collected the millions from the Chinese club that he was going to get anyways, right? So I think his motivation is in the right place. I think his heart is in the right place, and I think the players, if they're smart, and they'll definitely listen to him, because he is a legend. He's done it all before. He's been there before. Since him, we haven't even gotten out of the group stage of a major tournament ever since he retired. So that says it all, really. He was a captain, a true captain, and he was a good leader. And we'll see if he'll be able to steer this ship and lead this generation to something much better than we've been getting for the last decade. Luca, what are your thoughts on Pixie coming in as a new manager?
So, I guess it's not official, right? Because the FA hasn't announced it yet. But Pixie did come out and say, I will be the new manager, pretty much. So I'm still, I guess, semi-holding my breath, given, the FA's track record of this stuff, especially when they said they were going to hire a manager by, December 31st of last year. And now we're, 2 months in, and, it's still not official, I guess. But
it was actually December 15th.
Oh, December 15th? Oh, wow. Even worse, man. Well, what am I going to do? But overall, man, if he indeed is the manager, which it looks like he will be, probably 95% of the way there, I think out of all the possibilities that we could have had, he is the best possibility. I love what he said in the media. I know Milos Jusenover interview that he did as well. It's freaking awesome. You definitely get the sense that he's doing it because he wants to see Serbia as a nation succeed and not something for his own personal glory or that he needs a job or that he needs a paycheck, which you always love to see. And furthermore, the respect aspect is this will be the most respected person for our players next to since Radomir Antić, which I think is fantastic as well. So overall, I guess I mean I'm pretty pleased. I wish that they would have done it sooner, just so there could have been more preparation going into the qualifiers and everything, because it is kind of crunch time now. But better late than never. And out of all the possibilities, I think Pixie was the best one. So I'm glad he's on board, and I really hope that, like you said, he resonates with the players.
Yeah, and I also like that he's actually had some experience. We recently did hire a legend as well in Sisha Mihalic, but Miha hadn't really started his managerial career yet. Obviously, he's a really good manager now, and he was doing a pretty solid job in the national team as well before he decided to leave for a Serie A job. But I think Pixie's had 10 years as a manager now. He's won a trophy or 2 trophies in Japan, obviously not at the highest level, but he's at least been around a team for a long time. He's been around, coaching players for a long time. Even when he was a player, he was a veteran leader. I remember many times he was coaching younger players on the national team as well. So I like that he's actually experienced, and I think it's good that he's been preparing for this in a way, because he's actually been doing the job, unlike in the past, or even if he would have hired somebody like Vidic or something like that. Obviously, I think he can do a great job as well, but he hasn't been a manager before. He doesn't really know what to expect from the day in and day out of the job. So it's a major positive that he's actually had a job before. He's had a job for a long time. He's basically been with 2 clubs, and both those clubs he was with for a long time as well.
Right.
I think about 4 or 5 years with each of them, right, with Nagoya and with Ganju or whatever the Chinese team he was with last, however you say their name, but which is a major positive for me. Alexa, what are your thoughts on this hire?
Well, anyone that has the guts or the craziness to get involved in this poison chalice gets my respect, whatever the reason is, especially if they were former players that, they have something to lose, because a lot of the people that have gotten involved, like Šutic or Dikadvakat or other people, they didn't really have anything to lose. It was a bonus for them to be there, just kind of take the paycheck and leave. It's something that I think we've talked about before. What I've religiously insisted on is that there has to be some sort of a long-term plan in place, and if there isn't one, I don't think it matters who we get the manager. Even if Pep Guardiola decided to take over the job, I think without any type of a plan, that falls through the window. By far the biggest positive that I would say is the fact that apparently one of the major clauses in the defining clause in his contract was that he will stay the manager even for the Euro 2024 cycle, which is huge, because if that's a confirmation that he's going to stay no matter what, I think it gives him a huge opportunity to really work things in well. I think it's going to lower the expectations. I think it's going to lower the burden. His approach, he's somebody that certainly has made a huge impact in terms of his personality, of course, away from his playing days when he was he's one of the best players this country's ever produced. There's no question about that. But as a footballing worker, he was certainly visible as the president and as the president of what was then the Serbian Montenegro Football Association and the Yugoslavian Football Association. And even when he went to Nagoya and other places, he clearly left a big impact there. I don't think any country's perfect, but I value the Japanese a lot. And in Japan, he was very highly respected as a person and as somebody that wasn't just a great player, but that worked really hard to try and develop some sort of success there. And if the Japanese can judge you for being a decent character and being well respected there, then I think it's a good indication that, as you said, I don't think he's in this for the money. I do think that part of it is his personal, I guess, ego, which doesn't necessarily have to be in a bad way, that as a player, he was always one who wanted to lead a team. And that usually worked. There were times when it was counterintuitive. Of course, I never saw him play, so I'm not qualified enough to comment to that degree, but I know of everything that people have said to me and the people that I've talked to that did watch him, that when he was in a team where there were players of similar quality and when he tried to be the wolf to lead the pack, it could be destructive at times. And I think his attitude of taking no compromises and taking no prisoners, if you will, which we saw in the interview that you linked to very well, I think it can be kind of counterintuitive in the sense that, it's almost like, is he bigger than the job itself? Now, granted, he is somebody that is almost transcendental when it comes to great football and great players that have played here. Because we've had many players that you can argue were similar quality, and maybe some that were better. I'm not qualified enough to speak of that, but we had, Dan Savicevic and Benjaminovic and so many other great attacking players. But his off-the-field status, the myth that grew with him is something that's almost, transcendent with him. And the fact that he's come in with a very decisive approach and said, yes, I can do this. Yes, we're going to get there. Don't worry about it for a second. The confidence is something that I think I like in one way, because I think this group of players desperately needed a boost of confidence. I think that the notion that the players don't care is something that I don't necessarily like, and he mentioned that a couple times, that the attitude was wrong. Now, we've heard all sorts of stories come out of the FSS camps as far as, coaches are wanting to show up in practice and people showing up to 5, 6 a.m. into hotels and stuff like that. And if that is the truth, then his approach of taking no prisoners is absolutely necessary and the only one that he should take. On the other hand, we also see the amount of mileage that these guys have run in games. We also see people smuggling themselves. Remember the Scotland game? We remember Sergei and Dusan Vlahovic and other guys, and Nikola Milankovic basically smuggled themselves to come and play. Predrag Rajkovic played with a bruise on his eye. People played with injuries. So the notion that they don't care is something that he insinuated and I didn't necessarily like. And it is somewhat reminiscent of Sinisa Mihajlovic in that sense. I think that the difference between him and Sinisa was I love him, but he's a crazy bastard, and he was willing to go into war with everyone. It was his way or the highway. I think Pixie is more sophisticated when it comes to that, and I think that this team needs somebody that can grab the bull by the horn and go, you know what, we can do this, and I believe in these players. I don't think it's a matter of not caring. I think they just don't have belief in themselves as a team, and I think that some of the cuts that he's going to make are going to be severe. We've heard that Kolarov isn't going to be there anymore, which was somewhat expected, but someone needed to take that step. And in that sense, it's great that a name of his stature is there. He's certainly the biggest footballing name that has showed up probably, if not since Sinisa Mihajlovic, then since Radmir Antic. On the other hand, he's been out of European football for 15 years. He, in a managerial sense, he's been out of European football for a little bit over a decade. He's never managed at any level in Europe. He didn't have a great track record at Guangzhou. He actually lost more games than he won. And I'm not sure how many of us actually really know what his football is like. Now, we've seen the coaching staff that he's taken. He's made some, I think, positive changes in terms of bringing in a Japanese strength and conditioning coach, which I think is great. I think one of the reasons Japan has been good in recent tournaments is because they run hard and work hard. On the other hand, when you bring in Alexander Kocic as your goalkeeping coach, a guy that was notorious for letting the ball go past him when we lost to Slovenia, or we drew with Slovenia in the World Cup qualifiers, it doesn't really stack well for our goalkeepers. But I think it's going to be interesting. As I said, I think the fact that if he's given time and if he's given the freedom and the luxury to I guess, learn on the job, if you will, I think it's going to be great. I think qualifying for this World Cup, the group's not easy. I do think we have the quality to be second, but the playoff itself is going to be horrendously hard unless we get a lucky draw. And we've been in 3 of the last 4 World Cups, so putting pressure on him in this particular tournament doesn't really make sense. I think that the 2024 qualifier is one I'm looking forward to. I think by then he's going to have an idea of how to manage the players, how he's going to be able to manage the team. And also, managing internationally and managing in clubs is much different, because in clubs you're playing every single week and you have to have certain mechanisms and certain things that are automatic. In the national team, because you just simply don't have the time to practice all those tiny details, it comes down to individual quality, motivation, and organization. And I think that in that aspect he could bring some positive stuff, and I think he can learn on the job. And in that sense, I am more glad that he's there, but I'm never going to get my hopes up high because of the current establishment that we have. And like I said, even though it's great that he has that long-term contract, we also know that it can be ripped up at any time. And so that's something that can be a problem. But I'm very happy that he's there. I wish him all the luck in the world. I'm always appreciative when great former players want to, stick their teeth in there. And whilst the FSS certainly deserves criticism for not being transparent enough with this decision in terms of us waiting so long, because like you mentioned, Luke, it took them 2 extra months to come to this decision, which is not good in any sense. We're a month away and we don't really know what's going on. On the other hand, if he was fighting for certain privileges and certain things to be given to him, I understand. And also, people are going to criticize him for the money, which I understand, but at the same time, if you put yourself in his shoes, if you had to give up, and he gave up, hundreds of thousands of euros and pounds. He certainly gave up a lot of money to take this job. That's not a small sum to anybody, so I get that. We're going to have to wait and see how things go. I think the Ireland game is going to show us a lot, because they're a team that doesn't have the quality we do, but has the fight and the spirit that, we lacked, for example, in the Scotland game. And I think it's going to be a perfect test to see where we go. I'm excited. I think we have a young team that can stay together for a long time. And I think if he's given the time and the ability, he's someone who learned from Arsene Wenger, and he learned from Ivica Osim, and he learned from a lot of people. I think that he can do a good job. And ultimately, I'm more excited than I am disappointed, because the one change we all want is to change the FSS, but that's not happening. So you have to take what you can get. And if the option's doing that, Latovic and guys like that, or Pixie, then I think the choice is pretty easy.
Yeah, I'd agree, man. And just to add one thing, man, I think the pressure will actually be there right away from the first game. Just because he is coming in with this aggressive style, number one, and kind of outlining what he wants to do. And number two, his years of criticism on the national team. And you guys know, the state of the media in Serbia. I think the pressure will be on from day one. So we'll see how he's going to handle it. I know, Alexa, you have a, kind of a futuristic view where you're looking forward to, 2024 qualifiers. Obviously our media doesn't have that, and I think expectations will be pretty high, even in this World Cup qualifying. But like you said, I think we can't finish second there, if not first, because it is a World Cup qualifying, and for some reason we always want to go to the World Cup, and we do go to the World Cup. So it'll be very interesting, because there's so many dynamics at play that I think the pressure will be there from day one.
Oh, for sure, and especially with his interview that we're talking about, he sounded very confident. He sounded very confident in his abilities.
Right.
He basically said, he's been following the team for years. He knows what's needed and what has to be done to make it a success. So he does sound very confident, and I think, the pressure will definitely be there from jump. Hopefully it's true, and that he does have an automatic stay on clause for the Euro qualifiers as well. That would be amazing, because that's what we need. We need someone to have a stability with the job, someone to be here for a while, someone who can implement a system and have the time and the opportunity to make a program that will grow from year to year and be successful in the long term. And the best way to do that is to have long-term deals like this. And I hope, we know FSS is rarely true to their word, but I hope this is one of those things. And the thing with Pixie is, have you guys ever heard, one of his former teammates or players say a negative thing about him? He's pretty much a universally respected and well-liked guy. And as you mentioned, Alex, if the Japanese respect you, the Japanese do business with you, that means something. That goes a long way. Let me tell you something about the world. If Slavša Kokiza went to Tokyo and tried to make a business relationship, he would not succeed. They can read through you. They are absolutely, they know what they're doing, and they know all about respect, and they know about reading people.
Especially the work culture and their work ethic there. I mean, they just go out, and sorry to cut you off, but that's a really huge point that shouldn't be missed out. I mean, those people work 24/7 in their daily lives, let alone football, and they've worked so hard to develop their football, because Japan was a tiny, non-existent nation 20 years ago, and in the last World Cup, they almost knocked off Belgium, so they've come a long way. And if they have nothing but positive things to say about him in terms of his responsibility, in terms of how he approached things, and the limited things we did see, I think that's very important. Sorry to cut you off, but I felt that was an important point to make.
Oh, for sure. And I think it's just ridiculous when people talk about, he's doing this for the money, or he's corrupt. Like, he's losing money by taking this job. If anything, he's hurting his legacy by accepting to work with FSS. So I don't know what he has to benefit from this, other than, of course, if he does really well, then that will open the doors for him to getting European jobs, maybe at big clubs, maybe in bigger leagues, right? If he does well with the national team, and he's still a young manager as well. So the sky's the limit if he does well. But just to take this job, I think it's a huge risk for him, because number one, he can get fired tomorrow by the crazy people that run FSS. Number two, he's losing money. So I don't know where the greed or the corruption comes in here. Of course, he's, you could say he's getting about the devil and things like that. But at the end of the day, everybody that's done well has done the same thing. Antic, Muslin, these guys are well respected, that are experienced, that have been around the block, and they still decided to do the job as well, because maybe they wanted to challenge themselves, maybe they wanted to manage their nation, whatever their motivation is, they still decided to do it, and he's decided to do it as well. And I have a lot of respect for that. And I think, as we mentioned, his interview is I thought it was very positive. talked a lot about bringing pride and patriotism back to the national team, as well as professionalism and discipline. And these are just things that we've all been wanting and talking about and hoping that would come back for a long time. So I think the first signs are encouraging. We'll see what he says during his press conference on Friday, which we're supposed to have in Stara Pazova. So we'll see how that goes, and if he elaborates more on things, maybe he'll have a rule book or a code of conduct like Sisha Mihajlovic did back 6 or 7 years ago. But in the end of the day, I'm happy that we actually hired someone who was wanted for the job and not someone who was basically a third or fourth option, because he's been in talks to take over a national team pretty much ever since Antic was let go. I think he was part of that first rumored taking over for Antic group as well back in the day. So they wanted him for a long time, and now he's finally come. And we'll see how this goes. Hopefully it goes well. I think it will. But at the same time, you never know with us. You never know if the players will be receptive to someone who has a no-nonsense attitude. But hopefully they are, since he is someone that I'm sure they all respect, that some of them probably grew up idolizing him. And we'll see how that goes.
I would like to also add one quick point as far as to that. If he was to take over the moment when Antic was let go, I think that factor of the players idolizing him would have worked much more, because all those guys were born in 78 or 81 or 84, in years like that, where they could have kind of seen him play. I think all these guys, he's just kind of a generation too far behind them. I mean, some of them might have caught the very last days of his career when we were, in the 98 World Cup or Euro 2000. So I don't know if they have that kind of affiliation to him, but it's a double-edged sword, because the myth of him has grown so much over time.
Exactly.
Because we've sucked for so long, and it was the last time we were any good was when he was there, that they might actually appreciate him more. And it's certainly, we will talk about this in a minute. It does matter more when you have somebody that you obviously heard of, and you respect. Dragan Stojkovic telling you something, than having, Jusuf Tabakovic, who I still think did a decent job, but he just doesn't have the pull. He doesn't have that kind of authority. And I think that's something. And for the national team, if it was a club structure, it would be different. But because of the national team, and it's not so strategically, tactically based, I think it could end up being a really good move. It could. Again, the FSS is such that you can't ever say anything in advance. But it is what it is. And also, the point you mentioned about dancing with the devil. Well, Antic had €1 million paycheck at one point, and he was getting all the criticism, and Muslim was getting all the criticism as well for playing ugly. And then now they're being hailed as being great success. The same with Ilya Petkovic, even though Ilya Petkovic was a bit nuanced and different. But at the end of the day, the results are what's going to save you. And it doesn't matter what motivation you had when you took the job. I'm sure that all of them had some sort of patriotic, well-meaning reason for it. Maybe I'm not saying that was the only reason. I'm sure money and status and whatever was a part of it. But to say that they're coming in just for a paycheck is insulting, and it also increases the value of some of the other people that we know came in for a paycheck. We know that Radovan Šorčić and Dika Dvokat and Krstajić basically came in to take a paycheck and boost their CV. There's very little about them that you go, well, all right, I want to be here. I think with Pixie it's a different thing, and I think when someone's as vocal as he is, and like I said, the confidence that he has is good, because he's someone with a 40 who can have confidence, and he can lead this team. He can be the wolf that leads the sheep, because I really think this team has been battered psychologically because of all the unlucky losses we've had, because of the self-inflicted losses, because of all the chaos around them, because of the surreal pressure that's heaped on them. That's a reason that's been very problematic for them, and they need someone who's going to say, no, you guys can play, and you should be playing at the World Cup, and we should be celebrating going to a major tournament. It should be expected because you're this good, and it's time for you to show it. It's time for not just approval, but also accountability, which is something that has somewhat been lacking for a long time. And hopefully he strikes a chord with the players. Hopefully there are no feuds and stuff like that, and if that's the case, and he has all those guys available for selection, and there's a lot of good talent there, we can be really good, because I think we have a really good team on our hands, but only time will tell.
Right, and it's about time we had somebody as direct as Pixie seems to be, right? I definitely appreciated the directness of Mihajlovic as well. It's just that he was a little rough around the edges. It could be because he wasn't experienced at that time or whatever. But it is nice to have somebody as direct as Pixie, again, kind of outlining, telling people, hey, we should be at these tournaments and stuff. We have the talent. So I'm looking forward to it, man. That whole paycheck talk, that's always going to be there no matter who it is. Even if somebody's freaking, getting €10 a month payment, somebody will say something crazy like that. So I'm not even worried about that. Bottom line, I think initial signs are encouraging. I'm not going to get my hopes up too much, but I like what I'm seeing so far.
For sure, and so I think some of the people that were hired to be manager in the past, I don't think they were ready yet. They hadn't had any or much coaching experience yet. And look at Krstajic. I mean, he's doing a great job right now for Bačka Topola. It's his real first real coaching job. Like,
right.
Maybe he should have started off coaching a club in the Superliga before he took the national team over. It's things like that. I mean, he's doing all right now. It seems like he's an okay manager at least.
Right.
But unfortunately, he was thrust into an impossible, basically, job that he shouldn't have been in the first place because FSS is corrupt and crazy, and he never got that chance to be starting off in a lower club or building his way up in his career. He started at the top basically, and now he's got to go back down a level and try to go back to another decent level. But I think he's undefeated so far in his new job, his first coaching job, his first real coaching job, and you just got to put people in positions where they can succeed. And he was horrible, but he also wasn't put in a position where he could succeed. If we're honest with ourselves.
Very true.
All right, and I think that's going to do it for the national team talk. We'll have more next week once we get to hear from Pixie and once everything is 100% official. Now let's move on to the Europa League, and that's their big draw last week of facing Milan and Belgrade. That legend, Milan Pavkov, with the 93rd minute equalizer to get Zvezda a huge point. First of all, I just say, for a guy like Pavkov, who has played his entire career in Serbia, I think he's about to be 28 years old, to have scored 2 goals against Liverpool, to beat them in the Champions League, and then the 93rd minute equalizer against AC Milan to get a point in the knockout stage. Pretty amazing career, even if he never leaves Serbia. I mean, come on, that's worth a lot in my books. And also, before we talk about the game, let's just mention the negative thing. That idiot in the crowd who was insulting and saying really unexcusable things to Zlatan Ibrahimovic. That's embarrassing.
Yes.
There's no room for that. We're all tired, I'm sure, of people like that making our country, our club, and our people in general look bad. And just now, today we saw the news as well that UEFA's opened up an investigation into that. So I'm sure Spurs will be punished heavily for that incident, especially since they had control of who comes into the stadium. You let someone in who is clearly, an idiot. You deserve to be punished. So I don't know what the punishment will be or what will happen. Probably a fine. Hopefully not banned from Europe. But even if it's a ban from Europe for a year, you can't argue that it's not deserved when you couldn't even, ensure the safety or the calmness of a crowd when there's no crowd. Doesn't make any sense.
I think that a ban from Europe for a year is a little extreme for that situation. I mean, we'll condone the dude who was doing that. Obviously, extremely disgusting. But a ban, I think a heavy fine will do. But a ban for one guy, I know they had control, and it doesn't look good for Zvezda because there were literally no fans there, and they let the people in. So I don't know, man. I feel like that's a little extreme.
I would like to first of all, the word you were looking for was condemn, not condone. I don't want people
condemn.
to
My bad.
Is okay.
Yeah.
I of course being.
Listen, Alex, everything is condoned in Mexico.
Yeah, bro. Speaking half Spanish.
Get rid of those chimichangas, man. Listen, I did want to say something on this. Now, granted, it's I'm a Partizan fan, so whatever I say is going to sound very subjective, but I try to look at these things rationally and honestly. First of all, it's a part of my language. It's a dick move. Okay, Zlatan Ibrahimovic is somebody who was at Siniša Mihajlovic's testimonial in Novi Sad. He's somebody who's donated money to Obrenovac and the Floods. He's somebody who, in terms of his temperament, in terms of the way he plays football, is probably the closest thing that people in this particular region would love. The cockiness, the brashness, the flair, the swagger, all those things. And the guy was just chilling on the bench and not saying anything. And also, one of the tweets I mentioned, it's beyond stupid.
Right.
Because he's taking a mental note of it. And if he does play on Thursday, which we'll have to wait and see, I think they're going to take Europa more seriously now because they lost the derby to Milan and they're pretty much out of the title race at this point. If he plays on Thursday, he's going to score. And he's going to give it his all. He has a way of silencing his critics. because we've seen that for 20 years with him. And I think it's about time that the club went out and made a stand of this, because this has been a chronic problem. Now, we had the Xherdan Shaqiri situation, which was different because Xherdan Shaqiri provoked it in some way and he influenced the reaction being in that way. But still, it's not a good look if you're in a situation where you can't condone for the safety of a player. We had the Milan Pavkov situation when young boys played against Zvezda, when he was booed by far the most out of anyone on the pitch, just because he was a Serbian player, even though Milan Pavkov, as you guys know, has been one of the classiest, most well-spoken, well-mannered players that has played, in Serbia or represented Serbian football in a long time. And it's a problem that's kind of wide for the club, even in basketball. You had the whole Alanomi situation that was very unpleasant, where the fans rejected their own player because of his nationality. You had to look at Doncic's situation when he hit a 3 against Zvezda to win the game in the Euro League, where they were saying, how dare he play so well against Zvezda, his former club, how dare a Serbian play so well, he should be embarrassed, when the guy is Slovenian and probably more Spanish than anything else because of the time he spent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm just trying to say is, I approve of the fiery approach that the fans have and the passion that we have. I think it's a positive here, but I think there are times when it can go to extreme. And it's fine if it goes a little bit overboard in terms of club players getting insulted, but when you insult someone's ethnicity and nationality in such a manner, and especially because you handpicked who was going to go to the match and nobody turned around and disciplined that dude, and you didn't give. I mean, I know a lot of people that have been going to Zvezda games for 25, 30 years. My uncle, for example, who couldn't get tickets to that game, even though he's been a season ticket holder, even during the sanctions, for crying out loud, and they couldn't get into the game, but people that are in the current party did. So a lot of stuff from the upper offices in the club need to be handled much better. The fact that they were basically forced to make an apology, because that video came out right after the game, it took them about 24 hours to make an apology. That's bad form. Okay, now, of course, being a Partizan fan, we don't have a shining history of that either, but that kind of stuff usually doesn't happen. Sure, you'll have things thrown on, Mitchell Donald getting insulted because of his being a Zvezda player, and Marko Mana getting hit with a bottle. Like, we've had very bad incidents as well, but this was different because you could have chosen who was going to go into the stadium, and you still let that happen. Right. And it's a problem that's been chronically building for years and years, and the fact that you've made no stands against it, they need to be fixed, because it's going to be bad for them. At one point, I wouldn't be surprised in the increased politically correct time that we live in, that an insult of this type of manner could get you expelled from Europe, and all the good work in the last 4 years goes up in smoke. So I wanted to say that. Maybe I'm not the one to say that because of my club affiliation, but I felt like it was a need to say that because it's just stupid and it's embarrassing for all Serbian clubs, not just for Zvezda. It's a bad look for Serbia.
Yeah, man, that's the point. It's not. It wasn't in in Superliga play. It was on the international stage, and I mean that story made the front pages of ESPN.com in the United States. So that's how bad of a look it is, right? So definitely just so freaking stupid, man. And you're right, Alex. That's a great point you made. Why couldn't somebody just turn around and tell that guy, hey, man, shut the hell up. Shut the fuck up, right? Like, Zlatan just sitting down there not doing anything, and this guy just spewing hatred. I mean, totally disgusting, dude. But let's move on to something more positive, man, because we did just tie AC Milan and Belgrade, dude.
Yeah, exactly. And just at the end, the last thing, it's shameful, especially a guy like Zlatan who's only said good things about Serbia and Belgrade,
right?
Who's always, been best friends at every one of his clubs with the Serbian players. It doesn't make any sense. And as Alexa said, it is 2021. As we all know, this is a new world where political correctness and things like that are supreme at a supreme level. So it's not going to be long before a time when UEFA starts banning clubs for things like that. I think it's just a matter of time. The pressure's on. There's been a lot of times in the past where they've been lax with these type of punishments, and I don't think they're going to be able to be lax for much longer because of the current climate in the world.
Right.
And if we're honest, our clubs are often culprits of saying stupid shit. So hopefully we're able to knock that off before there are serious and drastic consequences. And I think
we saw the whole PSG Basak situation with the referee getting suspended because of a language miscue, and he got suspended. It was a huge deal. That happened in France. Can you imagine the odds of that happening in Serbia are way higher than that? So people just have to be careful, because especially with our track record, because we've had so many times when clubs have been suspended, they either got games behind closed doors or they got financial fines. a suspension is like a legitimate possibility. And we've already had points deductions for the national team, and I'm surprised we haven't been kicked out of qualifiers and stuff like that. So and it's something that's gone on for 10, 15 years, and nobody's taken a step to it. But that's, I guess, more of a social problem than an individual club problem, even though I think that the clubs themselves are not doing enough to actually stop that kind of behavior. But, it is what it is. We know who's running the clubs, and there's very little we can do about it. But it's going to come back to bite them on the ass one day, and I'm not going to feel any bit of regret. I'm not going to feel any regret if Zvezda Partizan get bounced out. You've been doing it that long, you deserve it. It's the only way.
Me either, and it's a whole new world, and everybody has to be very careful in this new climate. And our clubs are no different, our fans are no different. We're not invincible, and definitely Hammer will have come down and has come down in the past, but it'll be worse in the future. But yeah, let's move on to the game. I thought Zvezda did a really good job, other than obviously the few mental errors. Milan Pavkov, not the best night for him, of course. The couple, the own goal and the penalty, kind of a 50-50 call in my opinion.
Yeah.
I guess you could give it or you can't give it, but you can't be too mad either way that it was given. I think Zvezda had some good possession, some good chances. They didn't look inferior. They didn't look outclassed. I think obviously Milan was probably a bit better, but I don't think the gap in quality was what it's probably going to be in the home leg for Milan this week. But all in all, a very encouraging performance. I think Zvezda could have got even a win from that game with a little bit more luck and a little bit more guts, I think. Luka, what were your thoughts on the actual performance?
Yeah, man. You guys remember at the beginning when we had when the draw happened, it was AC Milan, and I said, "Hey, man, I'm gonna kick my feet back, relax, and just enjoy the game. I'm not expecting anything because we got out of the group, and that was good enough for me." However, I gotta say, man, I was pleasantly surprised with the game. I thought the boys came out, showed a tremendous heart, played their guts out. I think Njegos Petrovic had an amazing game. As well as a few other players, obviously. But I think a majority of the credit that I don't see people giving this person credit, I think needs to go to Stankovic. I mean, the dude is a bona fide killer, super serious, man, and I think tactically he approached that game brilliantly. Even when we went down to 10 men and that we were able to equalize thanks to, obviously Pavkov's awesome header once again. I think he played it brilliantly, man, and that's what gives me hope going into Milan in 2 days' time. I think, I'm obviously not expecting us to go through, but I am expecting a fight by the way that this Zvezda team is playing. The bottom line is, Zvezda is a team in form, Milan is not, and I don't think they're abandoning the Scudetto chase, because they're only 4 points behind, if I remember correctly. So they're still in it, plenty of games to go. I don't know if that's going to change their thinking and approach to the Europa League, but I think the Zvezda will come in there, put a fight on, and if anything, I think Stankovic will get the boys ready to give their all for the shirt once again. So much props to them, and I'm very much looking forward to this game.
Alex, what were your thoughts on the game?
Well, it was a bizarre game in many ways, I think. It was a bizarre game from the aspect of an officiating standpoint. There were a lot of very, very touchy things. You had the handball, the offside goal, which wasn't an offside goal. You had the handball goal of Theo Hernandez, which was out in it. It's hard to tell from the angle that they showed. I don't know if it hit Mandzukic in the hand or Theo Hernandez in the hand. It looked like it hit Theo on the hand, but I'm not sure. It was very kind of a tippy-tappy goal. A lot of fortune came in.
Are you talking about this? Yes, the penalty?
No, I'm talking about the Milan goal, the first one that they scored, which ended up
getting
which is the Theo Hernandez goal, which was the cross that came in, Borjan missed it, and the ball kind of ricocheted off Mandzukic hand or off Theo Hernandez, and it was a stupefying goal and a stupid game in many ways. The penalty call, I think that they've kind of modified VAR, which is annoying me with football, that it's gone from a very conservative sport to being liberal, where the rules are getting changed every 2 weeks. But they basically said that there was contact, and the only way that VAR can return a decision like that is that there's definitive evidence that there was no contact. And unfortunately, there was contact. Now, did he make the most of it? He absolutely did, but that's Italian teams in a nutshell. You had the Mandzukic elbow, which could have been a sending off if the VAR was looking at it. I think in the Premier League it would have been, because we've seen, people get sent off for way smaller shit than that. The second yellow by Rodic, which was unfortunately a yellow, I don't like the fact that he was given that yellow because the ball was clearly not going to Sammy Castellejo. It was going to win over him. It was a pass that was overhit tremendously poorly, and he gets a second yellow. And it reminded me, if you recall, of the game against Arsenal in the first Europa League of Milojevic, when he was sent off, and I think in the 83rd or 84th minute, he was leaping for a header in midfield, and I think he made minimal contact with, I don't know, whether it was Giroud or Theo Walcott, and he got a second yellow, and then Zvezda conceded right after that. But that's where I have to give credit, and I have to give him respect in terms of how he's got this team ready to play, and he's made significant improvements to many players. His approach, I think, as a manager has improved. I thought the first 4 or 5 months he looked terrible. I think both Fires looked really. And funny thing in it was the Omonia game when he lost was actually one of his better tactical approaches, and it's allowed him to play this group where, of course, there were expectations of coming through, but he's been able to grow and play with full opposition. He's taken steps forward. I'm starting to enjoy him more and more when he's speaking, because when he first came in, it was obvious he was way in over his head. He was giving very cliche sayings and very basic stuff, but he's actually analyzing games well. He's approaching them with more conceited passion. He doesn't look like a raging maniac on the sidelines like he did when he started. And the improvements he made to certain players, especially to Mirko Ivanic, were fantastic. Mirko Ivanic played one of the best games I've seen a Serbian player play in a very long time. He was fantastic from the start of the game. He was creating chances. He's managed to somehow calm down Guelo Conga, which is not impossible. The fact that Conga, he had a goal and an assist as well, but the work he did defensively I thought was fairly underrated. You know what it would like if Alexander would have been there. We'll obviously talk about what happens in the next leg. And of course, I mean, what happened with with Pavkov. I mean, the dude is. Some people are just born with a certain bit of touch and a certain magic. I mean, if you do it once, it's impressive, but he's done it to Copenhagen, he did it to Helsinki, he's done it to us in the Derby. And if you do it that many times, it's just not an accident. And he has become the biggest cult hero I think the club's had in a long time. And I think it's a testament to Stankovic's credit and to his credit that you remember the situation between the two of them was very tense at one point. It was very troublesome. It looked like he was going to be out of the club. But they fixed that situation. He's actually started to play more. And it's very frustrating and disappointing that the club didn't make certain advances when it came to the certain positions. I was very shocked to see Seiko Sonogo miss the starting lineup. I was surprised that he wasn't there from the start. But it actually turns out to be a good thing, because now you look at all the injuries and the suspensions that you have, you desperately need him for that, because you don't have Rodic because of the red card, Milanovic is suspended because of too many yellows. You don't have other players that are there, so it's going to be very disappointing. It's frustrating that they don't have any wingers who can play that position, or wing backs rather, because Gopadic and even Gajic at one point looked very much out of their sorts, and it's a shame that it's become kind of a typical business practice in this region that it's almost forbidden that you pay a lot of money for a fullback, because I think with a couple of really good fullbacks there, they could have done something here. The biggest advantages that Milan was getting was on the wings, with Theo Hernandez and Castellejo cutting inside, and it's unfortunate that because of, for whatever reason, they just didn't advance enough. And also the fact that Sonogo is the only defensive midfielder, it's bizarre that they started to make more attacking signings like Falco and Bakayoko. Falco looked actually really good. I thought that he was better than I thought he was going to be. So it was an excellent performance. I mean, they almost had 45% possession and had more shots on target and more shots on goal against Milan, who, granted, they weren't in their full lineup. They didn't have Ibrahimovic, they didn't have Kessie, they didn't have Çalhanoğlu, but that's still a fairly strong team. They played, if anything, they played a pretty strong defense. They had Romagnoli, they had Donnarumma, they had Fikayo Tomori, who was a Chelsea starter not long ago, and you can create that many chances against them. It's a testament that you're doing something right. I think that the performance as well, it was strong. I think that because of the very intense schedule that Milan has, I don't think they're going to come out with their strongest team on Thursday. The news that Katai and Ivanic and Falco are playing means that there's a chance that something might happen. Whether Pavkov or Fontanelli start from the beginning is there to be seen. The defense is really going to be the issue because of all the suspensions. Pavkov had a bad game, but he's also had moments where he stepped up and played really well, whether it was in the qualifiers or whether it was in other games. It looks like Sunic is going to be the left back, which I think honestly is the only decision you can really go with, because I love Slavic Sunic and I love his ability to fill many positions. And when you look at how bad Gopadic has looked for a long time, I think that's the only decision you go. Whether he goes with a 3 at the back or 5 at the back remains to be seen. There are talks that he might shift Sonogo to play center back, which actually might make more sense considering how Pavkov has been out of form. But then you lose a bit of strength in the midfield. So he's going to have a lot of work to do in a tactical sense, but Zvezda more than held their own. I mean, this Milan team is legitimately and deservedly a top 4 team in Italy, and even their reserve team is still really strong, and Zvezda played a very good game and showed a lot of heart. I mean, it's not often that we have teams that go down to 10 men and are losing and actually manage to scrape something out of the game. That's a testament to his credit and to his work ethic that he was able to do that. And there's a chance in the San Siro, which is, I think, more than anyone possibly expected. It's
Exactly.
a small chance, but it does exist. And I thought it was a really entertaining game. I thought they went out and gave it their all, and they busted their ass off for it, which is, at the end of the day, all as fans you really want. You want to see them give everything. You want to see them play good football, and they did. They created chances. They were shots from distance, and so on and so forth. So it's going to be interesting if this team stays. Of course, Kate and Ben are pretty much wanted by everyone, and because of their age, they're not going to play there forever. But some of the signings like Falco, and especially Ivanic, if he keeps playing like this, I think gives Stankovic a really good base for the next season. So it's a really good performance. And if by some chance they manage to get through, then somebody mentioned it. I don't see how Stankovic is going to stay after this season. I'm convinced that like 5 Italian teams are going to be banging at the doors to make him their manager. So that's going to be interesting.
I'm sure that's happening already. He's shown a lot of promise already, and I'm sure there's already Serie A interest in him, especially since he's a legend there, and now he's doing well at a decent European club in the Europa League. Great points, Alexa. I think it was a very positive and surprising performance. A great fight from the team, and I expect another great fight this week. Obviously, the absences in defense will be tough to overcome, and of course, the general gap in quality will be even tougher to overcome. I don't expect a miracle, but you never know. The team is highly motivated, playing with a lot of fire, a lot of passion, and they believe in their manager and they believe in each other. So you never know what can happen. Hopefully, we're here next week talking about a shocking result that shocks and shakes up Europe. But I think that'll be all for this week. Next week we'll have another show. We'll hopefully discuss a positive visit result as well as some positive national team news as we approach the start of World Cup qualifying in a couple weeks. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and have a great week.